Jacob Markstrom has been traded to the New Jersey Devils. Let's talk about what that means for Linus Ullmark and the Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke B. Today is Wednesday, June 19th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. And speaking of terms, a trade has been made between the New Jersey Devils and the Calgary Flames involving goaltender Jacob Markstrom, and this has direct implications for our Boston Bruins. We're going to break that down here in a moment. First, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, been following this team, covering them for various outlets for about 20 years now. Worked as a full-time hockey news writer for The Score, and have been hosting this podcast since 2019. And let's talk about this breaking news. I was going to record today breaking down three potential suitors for Linus Ullmark and what they could offer the Bruins and who could put together the best package, what was the best fit. One of those teams was the New Jersey Devils, and they have taken themselves off the board by making a deal with the Calgary Flames here on Wednesday. It's first broken by Travis Yost and later confirmed by other insiders, the two teams. And here are the details. Jacob Markstrom was traded to the Devils by the Flames for a first-round pick in 2025 and defenseman Kevin Bahl. Bahl is a name you may remember. He was originally, I believe, a pick of the Arizona Coyotes. He was involved in the trade that sent Taylor Hall from the Devils to the Coyotes, and he will now be on the move once again. He was a second-round pick back in 2018. So they're getting a 2018 second-round pick and a first-round pick in 2025. Now, there's a couple things to keep in mind here. First, the 2025 first-round pick being sent to the Flames is top 10 protected, meaning if the Devils have a top 10 selection next year, Calgary will receive the pick in the 2026 NHL draft. Now, the Devils have the 10th overall pick here in 2024. Largely due to the fact that their goaltending this past season was pretty abysmal. And the belief is that with Markstrom on board, that they will be a much improved team, a playoff team, and so that condition likely won't be in effect. But that's probably why they didn't trade their 2024 pick, is because they didn't want to give up a top 10 pick. This gives them the opportunity to pick up Markstrom for at least 2 years. He's got 2 years remaining on his contract, and retain their top 10 pick. And their hope, of course, is that next year's pick will be much, much later on. Now, it had long been rumored that Markstrom would not last too long in Calgary. He was non-committal about his future after the Flames failed to qualify for the playoffs, seemed to relish more of a winning environment and the opportunity to compete in the playoffs for the Stanley Cup, etc. Markstrom, for his career, has a 909 save percentage, 215 regular season wins, and he Now also has a 911 save percentage in 26 playoff games. Craig Conroy of the Calgary Flames saying that this gives them an opportunity to build for the future, adding Kevin Bahl, adding a first-round pick in 2026. He still believes they can be competitive with Dustin Wolf as their goaltender. Tom Fitzgerald of the Devils had made no bones about being in the goalie market. But, of course, he was unsure of what it was going to cost. He said, does the number 10 pick get you that type of player that you can add to the group? Easy to say, go get so-and-so, and you build from there. But there are some guys who have different contracts. So how are those players going to price out? A lot to it, but their focus was finding that goaltender. They did so without having to give up the 10th overall pick this year. And they get Jacob Markstrom for 2 more seasons at a cap hit of $4.125 million. That's because the Calgary Flames retained a portion of his contract. So pretty good deal. They won't be giving up a top 10 pick, Kevin Bahl, who may or may not have fit into their plans, and they got Calgary to retain, I believe, 31.25% of Markstrom's contract. So they're only going to be paying him $4.125 million against the cap for the next 2 seasons. And indeed, Calgary will be retaining $1.875 million. So not a bad little piece of business for the New Jersey Devils. However, they took themselves out of the running for Linus Ullmark. We'll discuss here why his value may be a bit higher. But the Devils now will be running with a tandem of Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen, 34 years old, 33 years old, respectively. And they will be able to make that top 10 selection unless they decide to make another trade involving that pick to add elsewhere. All right, so what does this mean for Linus Ullmark and the Boston Bruins and the goalie market? Well, we'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. Game Time is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and a lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying Red Sox tickets. You get a view from your seat so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive at Fenway. And you can toggle the all-in pricing feature so it shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Just download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets at the lowest price. Guaranteed. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. While you're on YouTube, check out Locked On Sports Today. All the latest news, opinions, analysis from across the Locked On universe. Ongoing coverage of the Boston Celtics NBA championship, ongoing coverage of the Stanley Cup final between the Edmonton Oilers and Florida Panthers. That's going to a Game 6. Catch it all on Locked On Sports Today, free on YouTube and the Amazon Fire TV channels app. So Jacob Markstrom fetching a conditional first-round pick, top 10 protected, and defenseman Kevin Bahl, who was a second-round pick back in 2018, for Jacob Markstrom, whose contract was retained at 31.25%. A pretty nice little bit of business for the New Jersey Devils. Now, here's why Linus Ullmark's value should be a little bit higher? Well, first of all, Linus Ullmark is 4 years younger. Markstrom turned 34 in January. Ullmark will turn 31 in actually at the end of July. So there's about a 3.5 year difference in terms of age between these two players. Both Swedish, of course. Linus Ullmark does have a Vezina trophy to his credit. And that occurred, of course, in 2023. Jacob Markstrom was a runner-up for that award back in 2022. However, the fact that he is 3.5 years older, he's further past his prime than Linus Ullmark is at 30 years of age, soon to be 31. If you look at their stats comparison over the last 3 years, Markstrom has the edge in terms of games played, 170, but Ullmark has 88 wins, 26 losses, 23 overtime or shootouts, overtime losses, I should say. So he's got more wins, 5 more wins, 33 fewer losses than Jacob Markstrom in 40 fewer games played. Markstrom has been carrying a much heavier load for the Flames than Ullmark has, with Jeremy Swayman as his partner. But that has shown in that production, and you can count on Ullmark to post pretty good numbers. He's got a .924 save percentage over the past 3 seasons, 227 goals against average. He doesn't have the shot and save volume that our boy Markstrom has, but again, he's had a lighter load due to sharing the crease with Jeremy Swayman. This past season, Markstrom with a record of 23, 23, and 2, and 4, I should say. Ullmark 22, 10, and 9. 915 save percentage compared to 905 for Jacob Markstrom. So Linus Ullmark has shown that he can put up elite numbers as a goaltender still at this level. Markstrom perhaps a bit past his prime, but the Devils are banking on the fact that in a better system, with more of a winning team, winning roster around him, he can regain the form that saw him put up that career high in 2022 of a .922 save percentage. He did have a .918 mark in 2020 with the Vancouver Canucks, .912, .912, .915 in the past. So he can put up pretty good save percentage, but the fact is Linus Ullmark is the better goalie right now. So he should be able to command a better return. Not a 2025 first round pick, but let's get into the first round this year if we can. Don Sweeney, that's the goal for the Boston Bruins. A first round pick, perhaps a young player in return. That's what the Flames got from Markstrom. The Bruins should be able to get a better return, or they cut out that secondary component, just go for the first round pick. I mean, if it gets them into this year's first round, why not? But the market right now has been set for Linus Ullmark based on this Jacob Markstrom trade. Another thing to take into consideration is the fact that Ullmark has only 1 year remaining on his 4-year deal with a $5 million cap hit. Markstrom, of course, had 2 years remaining, and now it's only at 4.125 because of Calgary's willingness to retain some of that salary there. So that's another thing to keep in mind here when it comes to Markstrom's value on the trade market versus that of Linus Ullmark. So where does this leave the Boston Bruins and their pursuit of a trade for Linus Ullmark? Let's discuss that here as the podcast continues. Jacob Markstrom is a New Jersey Devil. Linus Ullmark is still a member of the Boston Bruins. And according to some sources, this is from the fourth period. I should add, putting these reports in context, Linus Ullmark, number 4 on their trade board, and teams reportedly linked include the Los Angeles Kings, the New Jersey Devils, they're off the table, the Ottawa Senators, and the Buffalo Sabres. They write, Ullmark prefers to ride out the final year of his contract in Boston, but the Bruins are weighing their options and will continue to conduct trade talks with interested teams. Ullmark has some say where he may end up, and teams that tried to get him during the season are circling back. Now, if we're talking about first-round draft picks this year, you look at the Ottawa Senators, who have the 7th overall pick. The Buffalo Sabres are at number 11. Now, the Senators probably would be reluctant to trade that 7th overall pick, but what about a deal involving Jacob Chychrun? That's still on the table. He's got 1 year left on his contract at $4.6 million. A deal straight up, Ullmark for Chychrun, would seem to make sense. The defenseman may or may not want to commit long-term, or the organization may or may not want to commit long-term to him. 26 years old. Again, 1 year, 4.6 remaining on his contract. He had 14 goals, 27 assists in a full 82 games for the Ottawa Senators last season. Would be a fantastic addition to the top 4, playing on the left side with Charlie McAvoy. You give Mason Lohrei the opportunity to develop in a less intense role. That could make sense. And again, you have to look at New Jersey was willing to give up that first round pick because it was top 10 protected and because they got some salary retention there as well. This one would be a straight up 1-for-1, assuming that Ottawa's not willing to give up their first round draft pick, which is 7th overall, which is pretty valuable. Now the Sabres at 11, or sorry, at where are they? 10th, are pretty interesting. Ullmark, he's said to be reluctant to move, but this would be taking him to familiar territory, seeing as he came to Boston by way of Buffalo as a free agent. The Sabres are a team on the rise. Devin Levi, perhaps not fully ready for full-time duties as an NHL goaltender, still only 22. They do have Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who's 25, a bit more established. He's a restricted free agent. Eric Comrie is an unrestricted free agent. You sign UPL to maybe a bridge deal, bring Ullmark in. That would be a pretty formidable goaltending tandem to go with a nice little defense pair. Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power, Bowen Byram, who are currently under contract, as well as our old friend Connor Clifton, with whom Ullmark has played. So perhaps he would be amenable to going back to Buffalo, seeing as there is some comfort there. Now, here's the thing with either of these trades, is that trading Ullmark within the division is a risky proposition because both of these teams, Ottawa and Buffalo, have been on the outside looking in for the last little bit. They're both looking to rise in the standings, both looking to enter the playoff race. It's conceivable that, there could be say the Bruins finish tops in the Atlantic next year after acquiring some players this offseason. Jeremy Swayman goes on to carry them, becomes a Vezina Trophy candidate with a heavier workload. Ottawa or Buffalo sneaks into the playoffs. Swayman versus Ullmark in the opening round next year. Ullmark with that chip on his shoulder, wanting to prove that the Bruins should have kept him at least for the duration of his contract that he signed with them, if not beyond. Keep that tandem together. That's a juicy revenge narrative there that the Bruins would not want to have blow up in their face. I'm sure they would much prefer to send him to Los Angeles, with whom they apparently had a deal prior to the trade deadline, but he nixed because he didn't want to make that move in season. Would he be more open to moving to LA here in the offseason, where you get a chance to ease into that transition? Who knows who they'd be willing to part with on the LA side of things, but they've got a bevy of prospects, young players. Did they trade Pierre-Luc Dubois, retaining some salary instead of buying him out? Who knows? But I'm sure the Bruins, if they had their preference, it would be a Western Conference team to avoid having to face Ullmark perhaps in the playoffs down the road. At any rate, I'm sure their priority is simply to get the best possible return. The market now has been somewhat set here by Markstrom. Calgary retaining, New Jersey putting protection on their draft pick. Maybe Buffalo would be willing to trade the 11th overall pick here in 2024 for one season of Linus Ullmark. That could be a bit of a stretch. What seems to be the most logical conclusion here is Ottawa, Boston flipping 1 year of Ullmark for 1 year of Chychrun and see what happens there moving forward in terms of re-signing. That seems to be the most logical thing, but I would still love to get into the first round here with a trade bringing home a draft pick. So that's the Jacob Markstrom trade. That's what it means for the Boston Bruins. That's today's episode. Tomorrow, we're going to look at Jake DeBrusk and whether he's going to resign or what options he might have on the open market. Bring you all the latest on the black and gold here on Locked On Boston Bruins, because we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and we talk about your favorite hockey team every single day. I hope you're all doing well, friends. Stay cool out there. Stay hydrated. It's unbearably hot up here. And we press on here on Locked On Boston Bruins. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you again here tomorrow.